We continue our trip through Portugal.
Today we'll see the mountain Monsanto, that is, Holy Mountain,
and a village on its side, which is called the most Portuguese village in Portugal.
We'll also learn how this place relates to the Knights Templar.
All the chapters are marked in the description. Feel free to switch to what interests you most.
We at the Foreign Visitors View YouTube channel invite you to join a free trip around Portugal.
We are your guides,
Konstantin Krasovsky.
and Tatiana Andreeva.
Subscribe, hit the like button and leave your questions in the comments.
When approaching Monsanto, we see a mountain rising from a relatively flat area around.
Geologists say that Monsanto is built on a granitic rock mass, Inselberg.
Inselberg is a German word for island mountain. It means that an isolated rock rises abruptly from the surrounding plain.
Monsanto is considered a part of the volcanic massif of Lisbon. This mountain is composed by a core of limestone surrounded by a mantle of basalt 214 meters tall.
Indeed, the houses built in the village of Relva, located just below, look like they were sawn out of limestone.
We go higher and see huge stone boulders. What is more present here, basalt or granite? The opinions of geologists differ.
Both of these rocks are very hard and are of volcanic origin.
The difference lies in the fact that basalts are formed during the rapid solidification of lava, and granite during a slow one.
Monsanto is often mentioned as the most Portuguese village in Portugal.
This description dates from 1938.
Since then, building restrictions have allowed it to survive as a living museum.
This title was only awarded once.
As a prize, Monsanto was awarded a silver rooster, which is placed on the Torre de Lucano.
This place was a stronghold back in the times of Lusitania.
Then it was occupied by the Romans, invaded by the Visigoths, and conquered by the Arabs.
It was the Templars who subsequently constructed the hilltop castle in the 12th century.
Because Templars appear not only in history but also in the streets of Monsanto, let's briefly recall who they were and how they relate to Portugal.
Knights Templar, or simply the Templars, were also called poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon.
This was a military order of Catholic faith founded circa 1119 after the First Crusade.
And the capture of the holy city of Jerusalem.
The order was headquartered on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem.
The order had few financial resources and relied on donations to survive.
Their emblem pictured two knights riding on a single horse, emphasizing the order's poverty.
The original purpose of the order was to protect pilgrims on their journey to holy sites in the Middle East.
The Templar Knights, in their distinctive white mantles with a red cross, were among the most skilled fighting units of the Crusades.
The battles of the Crusaders, including the Templars, are depicted in the paintings of artists from different centuries.
However, not all of them were warriors.
Some were prominent in Christian finance.
They developed innovative financial techniques that were an early form of banking.
In his book, The Monks of War, the Military Religious Orders, historian Desmond Seward wrote, "The longest occupation of the Templars, their contribution to the destruction of the Church's monopoly on usury, was the occupation of the economy. No medieval institution did more for the development of capitalism."
In 1307-1314, members of the order were arrested, tortured, and executed. This was done by the French King Philip IV, major feudal lords, and the Roman Catholic Church. As a result, the order was abolished by Pope Clement V in 1312.
The list of charges brought by the Inquisition against the Templars included several dozen items. They were accused of various kinds of heresy and idolatry.
However, a more significant reason could be the financial problems of the French monarchy and the huge amounts of money that Philip IV owed the Templars.
Following the suppression of the order, a number of Knights Templar joined the Order of Christ, established in Portugal in 1319.
Portuguese King Dinis refused to persecute the former knights, as it was being done in most other states under the influence of the Catholic Church.
Denis needed the knights' continued aid during the Reconquista and in the reconstruction of Portugal after the wars.
To strengthen the rebuff to the pressure of the Moors from Granada and Morocco, Dinis I handed over to the Knights of the Order of Christ a vast castle fortress in Castromarim, in the south of the kingdom, in the Algarve.
We reached Castromarim 2 days later and will definitely share our impressions about this town with its castle and fortress.
After the Reconquista, the Order's headquarters became a castle in Tamar, a former Knights Templar castle since 1160. However, we haven't visited this castle yet.
It might be interesting to mention that tomar in Portuguese means to take or to drink. Just to complete the story on Templars, in the 18th century, several modern organizations without clear historical connection with the Knights Templar appeared.
Following the belief that the original Knight Templars drank sour milk, and also because they were fighting a great crusade against this terrible vice of alcohol, many temperance organizations named themselves after the Templars.
The largest of these, the International Order of Good Templars, IOGT, grew throughout the world after being founded in the 19th century and continues to advocate for the abstinence from alcohol and other drugs.
Another example is the Ordo Templi Orientis, established by the German-speaking occultists at the turn of the 20th century, which is linked with the European esoteric and Freemasonic movements.
Perhaps we ended up in this castle built by the Templars because we met as members of an organization that was part of the temperance movement.
Or because we have already been here in our past lives, as it appeared to me in a past life regression session.
Back to Monsanto, the castle is believed to have been built by Templars even before they were dissolved elsewhere in Europe.
It was built in 1171, several decades after the order's creation, when it, however, already was quite popular. Busy with the reconquest of the territory, Afonso Henriques of Portugal, whom we discussed in our video about Guimarães, donated the region of Edania Avelia and Monsanto to the brothers of the Knights Templar in 1165.
The castle was built soon after this territory, including Monsanto, was taken back from the Moors in the 12th century.
To see the whole picture, the castle on top of Mount Monsanto became one of the several reference points.
Together, they formed a line that protected the capital, which was at that time in Coimbra and roughly corresponded to the border of the Almohad Empire.
The impressive walls of the castle are made from the local granite, as is the town which grew around it. It stands on top of a hill with a height of 763 meters, offering a beautiful view. Here a geodesic mark is placed.
Monsanto Castle consists of 3 walled courtyards.
In the center of the main enclosure, just behind the massive boulder, is a large well reinforced by 2 arcs.
This was the castle's water supply during the Middle Ages.
Originally, the castle had 5 towers, but only one is still standing, the Torre do Piau.
It was an isolated watchtower, quite a distance from the medieval castle.
This location outside the walls on a hill in front of the castle made it possible to cover a dead spot and provide better surveillance of the north slope.
The castle's defenses were improved in the following centuries, with the addition of artillery and the strengthening of the walls and gates.
However, this was done at the expense of the original Templar structure, much of which was demolished.
Finally, the fortress was left in ruins after an explosion of ammunition in the 19th century.
The Cappella di Santa Maria do Castello is a small square church within the castle walls, built at the end of the 17th century and rebuilt in the 20th century.
2 other churches here are the ruined Chapel of São João, which has no roof, and the Church of São Miguel.
Next to the castle is located the Capella de São Miguel Chapel, Romanesque in origin and with several sarcophags carved in the rock.
It was part of the upper town of São Miguel, which was the original settlement of Monsanto since the Middle Ages.
This upper town was abandoned after the cold Christmas Eve of 1814, when a bolt of lightning struck the armory where the gunpowder was stocked.
The explosion destroyed part of the castle, as well as several buildings across the parish of São Miguel.
However, the village itself seems to be much older than the castle.
Mons Sanctus is the Latin for Holy Mountain.
Between the 5th and 11th century, this territory was occupied by Visigoths
And Arabs.
Researchers found its inhabitants still playing a duf, a traditional Moorish instrument.
The narrow, winding streets of Monsanto also point to these periods in history.
However, there are undoubtedly more traces of the influence of Christianity.
The developed tourist infrastructure helps numerous visitors to find their ways towards various attractions of this most Portuguese village in Portugal.
Monsanto is memorable for its red tile roofs and houses carved directly into granite boulders.
Exactly on this day, we began to observe how wisely the traffic on Portuguese roads is organized.
Especially if you are not driving on highways, but on roads connecting towns.
And we began to understand how we could save time on Portuguese roads.
But we will tell and show this in one of our following videos.
Stay tuned to get to know everything that we discovered during our road trip through Portugal.
Here were your guides
Konstantin Krasovsky.
and Tatiana Andreeva.
See you in the next city or country.